Hello, and thank you for joining us for eTech Resources webinar. As you're aware, we will be making forward-looking statements. These are based on our assumptions and understanding and are in no way a guarantee of outcomes. What we will be covering today is a recap of the 2023 activities, some of our learnings, and outline where we're heading in 2024. We're going to be joined by Flightec's participant in the Aeromag survey, which was conducted earlier this year, as well as one of our geologists on the ground in Namibia. For those of you unaware of eTech's Eureka project, we are located in Namibia. It's a coarse-grained monazite deposit hosting rare earth element constituents such as neodymium and praseodymium. Namibia is a mature mining district, as well as the favorable mineralogy that we have. We've done preliminary test work on the mineralogy, and it seems to be very favorable for liberating these type of rare earth elements. Namibia itself is blessed with very mature infrastructure, including railway, power, access to ports, and it also is the location of the Namibia Rare Earth Alliance, which eTech is a member of. Let's take a quick look at our tenements. The original tenement, 6762, is outlined in black. You'll see a couple of dashed black outlines within that, which are the location of the discovery deposits. The blue outline shown is the perimeter of the Eureka Dome structure, which we are targeting in our exploration. Surrounding EPL 6762 is EPL 8748. We entered into an agreement to acquire an 85% controlling interest of this tenement, and we're moving towards completing that in early 2024. I mentioned earlier a bit about the metallurgy. We've conducted some beneficiation projects or bench scale tests. We've got gravity and magnetic separation processes, which are producing 65% recovery of greater than 60% total rare earth oxide. This is quite favorable when you're looking at rare earth element deposits and bodes well for us moving towards commercialization of this project. Our board and management are shown here on the top. And in the lower half of this slide are our in-country team. The four people that we have shown below are all graduates of the Namibian University Geological Sciences program. They really are our face within the country, and they ensure that we operate in compliance with all legislative and regulatory requirements. A bit of a historic overview. Since 2017, several RC and diamond drilling campaigns have been undertaken, including reconnaissance prospecting, mapping, and other structural activities. In 2023, the shift went towards looking at the acquisition of the rest of the property which captures the Eureka Dome and focusing more on the exploration aspects of our project. The highlights shown below where we initiated a comprehensive data analytics program. This project is blessed with a lot of information from drilling and the historic works. We undertook a regional geochem program over the entire Eureka Dome structure contained within EPL 6762. We had an ultra-high resolution magnetic survey flown, and as a result, we're in the process of analyzing all of that information. And we have a new exploration model emerging, which we're validating with the historic drill data and other results. Already this year, we've had our people out on the ground, and they've been ground truthing some of the concepts and getting some favorable results. So what we're going to do now is switch to a pre-recorded summary of the exploration activities. This is to ensure that bandwidth problems don't interfere with this presentation. So we'll give it our best shot. I'm going to go to video now.
Thank you very much, Doug. As you mentioned earlier, we have a core team of 4 geologists on the ground and several geotechnicians to assist us with our daily exploration efforts. The 2023 exploration campaign can be summarized into two halves. In the first half, we were using thorium radiometric anomalies, or thorium anomalies, as a target method. We were essentially trying to find targets which were similar to the deposits located in the central Eureka, zone 1 to 4. We managed to generate 17 targets, as you can see on the map on the right. We placed grids over those targets, 10 by 20 meters, and sampled them live in the field with a portable XRF machine. Next slide. In Q3, we made a review of the soil sampling methodology and the exploration program in general. The team realized that increasing the spacing to 20 meters by 40 meters would not compromise the quality, as one can see the spacing on the two sample grids on the right. The result of that decision was the increase in efficiency of the ground. Another thing that we changed was our target approach. The team decided that doing a regional survey instead of the smaller targets would be the best approach. And the result was a grid that covered the remaining 70% of the area within the property that covers the Eureka Dome. Changing the sampling and the analysis procedure was also something we felt that we had to do to get the most out of the data that we were collecting. We decided that it would be best to have a dedicated team in the field collecting the samples and a dedicated team at the office doing the geochemical analysis. We also changed the targeting method from thorium, radiometric anomalies, to rare earth geochem signatures. The team also began to think about introducing a high-resolution aeromagnetic survey to be conducted over some areas of potential over the property. One of the key changes during Q3 was to bring on an experienced partner in gecko exploration. Gecko has several years of experience in the Namibian exploration industry and have developed noteworthy rare earth projects in Namibia, such as Lockdale and the Eureka Rare Earths Project. Next slide. In the fourth quarter of 2023, we concluded our annual exploration program and we were able to compile and process the collected data. Overall, in 2023, the team analyzed over 37,000 soil samples, which have all been stored away for reference, as we see on the image on the right. We were also able to cover the entire dome that is within the current property. Flightec managed to produce quality high-resolution aeromagnetic data, which has been integrated into eText database. The most important outcome of the exploration program was, however, the generation of new exploration targets. As you can see on the far right, able to generate a completely new exploration model. Next slide. Just to give you a bit more detail on the new target generation model, we have now developed a sequence of steps before we can confidently drill a target. We identify rare earth anomalies and grade them on their size and intensity as shown by the map on the right. That is the first step. The second step is that we establish a trend of the soil migration. The third step involves us using our mag data to determine if there is an adjacent magnetic signature to the soil anomaly. The fourth step, we refer back to our historical mapping data and do some ground truthing in that area to determine if there are loose visible monazite crystals in the soil or if there is hard rock, possibly carbonatites, in the vicinity. And the final step involves us putting all of that together. When several of that criteria is met, we do control trench. From the trenches, we can obtain critical lithological, structural, and geochemical data. If the results from these steps are encouraging, we can then confidently motivate for a drilling program. And that summarizes eText 2023 exploration program. Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you very much, Tom.
All right. Well, thank you for bearing with us and watching that video clip. Erastus, you did a great job on that. Erastus did mention in that clip that we had some aeromag flowing. Now I'd like to turn this over to Louw to be able to walk through what his company undertook and talk a little bit about some of the product that resulted from it. Over to you, Louw.
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate it. I'm Louw Hager, COO of Flightec, and just want to thank eTech for the opportunity to present this data and this platform. So as mentioned previously, towards the end of 2023, we conducted an aeromagnetic survey over 3 distinct regions in the Eureka project for ETEC. The survey was conducted with a drone-borne magnetometer, and the aim of these tests were to furnish ETEC with a magnetic data set of high resolution for them to be able to test whether there's a correlation between the magnetic structures that they see and the mineralization that they're looking for. So in this slide, I'll just briefly cover who we as Flightec are and what we do. Then we'll move on to the approach we followed with ETEC and how that survey panned out. And we'll have a brief look at some of the data that was generated during the survey. Next slide, please, Todd. Okay, so who are we? Well, we've been doing exploration since 2019 when we conducted our first aeromagnetic survey. We've branched out specifically focused on drones. We do magnetic and radiometric surveying. And as of late, we're trying to echo what we do above ground, below ground, and we've also incorporated some downhole drill logging, focusing on magnetic and radiometric data. So we identified in Namibia specifically and in the Southern African region that there's a need for higher quality survey data on smaller scale. That doesn't necessarily always mean that you can mobilize a helicopter for airborne survey, and this is typically where we come in. We believe that drones is the way forward, not necessarily manned aviation. And we focus on small to medium-sized projects, but all projects are relative and drones are parallel scalable. So yeah, size is but a number. All of our drones operate autonomously, but we are fully compliant with the civil aviation regulations to be able to perform these surveys in manned airspace. I mentioned we started in 2019. Some of our memorable projects are specifically the Kunene Region project. This has been ongoing since the end of 2019. We've flown over 5,000 flying kilometers there, focusing on magnetic and radiometric data. It's over 8,000 hectares. Grootfontein was also worth a mention, not specifically for the interesting geology, but rather for the administration that was involved. Grootfontein is home to the Namibian Air Force, and typically the entire region around is restricted airspace. So it took some doing to get flight approval to operate unmanned drones in military airspace. Next slide, please, Todd. So why do we believe drones is the way forward? Well, I mentioned briefly that the drones fly autonomously, but what should be mentioned more, what should be pronounced more significantly is the fact that your proximity to source increases the magnetic response that you have. So with drones, as compared to manned aviation, we can fly closer to the ground. Compared to landborne surveys, we can cover greater areas. The drones are parallel scalable, so currently we can possibly operate up to 3 drones per team in the field. In future, we hope to have entire drone swarms that are capable of doing this mapping. Your proximity to the ground and your consistency in your flight envelope resolves to higher resolution data that can be generated, which in turn will be beneficial to the clients. We also have a small operational footprint. On the image on the right-hand side, you can see there's 3 vehicles and 1 drone. So 3 vehicles. We only typically require 1 vehicle. The other 2 were there for promotional material. Our operation is rapidly deployable, and typically we've got a small environmental footprint. And the whole focus for us is if we can generate higher quality maps, it can mean a more effective drill program, and that can mean less disturbance to the environment as we see it. And then, a big one is obviously the reduced operational risk. You can imagine the drone is lightweight as compared to manned aviation, and seeing that it's flying lower, if we were to have an accident and the drone comes down, the damage would be much less significant than it would in the corresponding manned survey. So there's a list of some of our other services. I won't go into detail on that. Todd, you can move on to the next slide, and we can start with the Eureka project and specifically what we did there. So all of our surveys typically start with a topography map. The reason we require a topography map is, I mentioned, we're flying low ground clearance. So we need exact maps of where all of the obstacles are that we plan to fly. On the right hand, you'll see a DSM. This is a digital surface model. Notice the trees in the riverbeds. These are potential hazards for such a survey. The drone will typically follow the terrain down into the riverbed. And as luck would have it in Namibia, all of the riverbeds that have trees in, the trees are quite large there. So as part of our survey, in order to generate the topography map, we use a fixed wing VTOL illustrated on the left-hand side. This is a small plane equipped with a high resolution camera. It surveys the entire area and takes subsequent pictures of the area. These pictures are then stitched together for a high resolution photo that's also rectified. And then together with the DSM on the right-hand side, we also generated DTM. A DTM is a digital terrain model. It is similar to the DSM, but all of the foliage has been removed. Todd, you can go on to the right. Next slide, please. So using the DTM, which will represent the ideal flying surface, and the DSM, which would represent all of the hazards that we're trying to avoid, we can take the drone's flight envelope into account and generate a flight path. The image on the top of the screen will actually show you a flight path that was done over one of the 3 Eureka regions. This flight path specifically is zone 1 to 4. You'll see the drone dip down into the riverbed while still avoiding any obstacles that might be in its way. Additional optimization of the flight route that we do is we look at the drone specific flight envelope, specifically acceleration and velocity curves. The reason for doing that is you'll see in the next slide, the magnetic sensor is suspended beneath the drone. So if we don't manage the acceleration and the velocity of the drone, the magnetic sensor can swing forwards and backwards, which will induce additional noise on the system. So on the right-hand side is a typical setup of a one-man operation in the field. We usually send an assistant as well, as it does get lonely out there. The system is an optically pumped magnetometer. The Eureka project was quite a flat area to survey, so we selected a maximum flight velocity of 10 meters per second for the drone. The high sample rate on our sensor allows us to generate a sample or a magnetic measurement every centimeter down the line. This is significant oversampling down the line, but it does afford us the opportunity to apply additional filter techniques. So if there is noise present in the magnetic measurements as the sensor moves beneath the drone, then we can compensate for this. In terms of magnetic processing, processing is standard and similar to airborne magnetics. We do diurnal correction, IGRF, and as I just mentioned, we've got an attitude compensation where we compensate for any movement between the sensor and the drone. The data is then leveled, micro-leveled, and gridded into a final product. So onto the next slide, and we'll see how these grids typically look. Over here, you'll see a TMI grid. TMI means the total magnetic intensity. It is the strength of the magnetic field as measured by the sensor. The left-hand image is a regional TMI field supplied by courtesy of the Namibian Ministry of Mining and Energy. I've overlaid the 3 areas that was surveyed for the Eureka project on this slide, on this image. The middle image and the right-hand image are extracts from the bottom left zone. This is referred to as zone 1 to 4. On the center image, I've rescaled the color bars to coincide with the scaling that was applied to the drone-borne images. So what you'll notice here on the TMI field is that there's this significant more resolution in the drone-borne TMI than the regional TMI. The reason for this is that there's a tighter line spacing on the drone TMI. The drone was flown at 25 meters, and the drone's also flown closer to the ground as compared to the regional TMI. But what is nice to see here is that the magnetic highs of the regional TMI and the magnetic highs of the drone TMI coincide. Here to get more detail. And if you use your imagination somewhat, you can imagine that there are northeast trending magnetic high dikes associated with it. But luckily, we don't need to use our imagination. We've got additional processing techniques. So if we go into the next slide, on this slide, we've applied 1VD. So this is the first vertical derivative of the magnetic field. Basically, what it does, it removes any long wavelength features and emphasizes the shorter wavelength features and features that are close together. So here on the right-hand side of the drone 1VD, you'll clearly see that these magnetic highs are in fact ridges that link along. And if you further look into it, you can see that there are actually northwest facing dikes as well. But yeah, noteworthy on this is that had you used the regional data or lower quality data for a drill plan, you might have completely missed the magnetic anomaly you were trying to target or trying to miss for your drill plan. We can carry on to the next slide, Todd. So on this slide, we can see an overlay of the magnetic data as gathered by Flightec, the 3 areas of interest, overlaid on the historic data from ETEC. There's also some magnetic high and magnetic low dikes as mapped by ETEC. Just need to note that the data on this specific slide is not TMI or 1VD, rather this is an RTP data. So RTP means it's reduced to pole. Quite simply put, it's accounting for the Earth's magnetic field and the offset the Earth's magnetic field has on our data. So we remove this offset, and it means that the colors or the magnetic highs and lows coincide with the source. So they're now shifted to be located directly above any sources that might be generating them. At this point, Todd, I think I'll hand back to you and you can go into more detail of what your plans are and if we've managed to find any correlations between your mineralization and magnetics thus far.
Thank you very much, Louw. That's an excellent summary of your activities. This slide here shows some of the historic interpretation on the dike, the presence of dikes, and you can see this in the black lines. This existed prior to this high resolution magnetic data being collected. And what I find encouraging when I see this is there is a correlation. As Louw said, we don't have to rely simply on our imagination. We have a lot of information available to us. This, all of these results are fairly recent, and we're in the process of evaluating the data, correlating the different data sets, and coming up and proofing what our exploration concept is. When you look at this slide here, you can identify features that were previously not targeted for drilling, and we now need to be able to go back, do our analysis, look at some inversion modeling of the magnetic data, take the drill traces, and really very closely, point by point, try and develop or validate this exploration model. This is encouraging, but we still have a lot of work to do. The work with Flightec, combined with the regional geochem data that we now have, builds on the initiative that started in early 2023 with this move towards optimizing our exploration efforts by utilizing technology. When the ETech team brought in the use of the X-ray fluorescence tool to be able to help us get near real-time results in the field. So building on this, and again, I want to emphasize, we are still in the process of analyzing all this information. The geochem program itself finished up on December 22nd or something like that. So it's still in the process of getting cleaned up, and the data sets are getting cleaned up and being analyzed. But if you look at the data now, the regional geochem data, one can postulate that there has been a migration of material on the surface over time, and that migration primarily goes from northeast down towards southwest, which makes a bit of sense. When you then take the new AeroMag signatures that we're seeing, and if you agree that this data or detritus has migrated, then one can start looking a little bit to the northeast of where the big signatures from the geochem data are. Again, we're fortunate that we have drill data from the central zone and other areas where we can rebuild and reconstruct some of these situations and validate this model. So back to Erastus's exploration model and the target generation steps. This is exactly how we're approaching things. You can see right here the areas where the sample data for the AeroMag was taken. You can also see the regional signatures from the geochem program. Now we know that we have some magnetic anomalies to the northeast in these areas down here, and we have drill data where we can look at the intercepts and determine what was the percentage and probability of success in setting that hole. This is very encouraging from an exploration perspective. If you back up and take a more regional perspective at it, here again are the geochem anomalies on EPL 6762. One can imagine that there is a trend, but we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We need to validate this. But it does seem that these soil anomalies do follow a specific pattern and position within the sedimentary sequence within the Eureka Dome. The exciting thing for me is this regional geochem data has identified new targets of similar, they're qualitatively and quantitatively of the same size as the Eureka Central deposits that have been drilled off. This opens up some significant targets for further exploration in 2024. With respect to EPL 8748, we don't have the geophysical data, nor do we have the geochem data yet, But with our new approach and the efficiencies that the field team have acquired, we can conceivably cover off the entirety of the Eureka Dome within 2024 and build on our exploration planning and drill targeting. So for priority target generation, we've already identified and gone back and ground truthed several areas. These areas down here were not a primary area of focus. At the end of 2023, we found some pretty interesting samples at surface. Combined with the geochem signatures, these are things that we're giving further attention to now. So for our next steps, we're initiating some trenching in these new target areas, just very specific areas to make sure that we can get down low cost, fast results, see if we can hit some mineralization, see if we can get some structural data from it, and then again, go back to that targeting sequencing model and build out a drill program that's going to optimize our chance for success. So to summarize, the Eureka project is blessed with high-grade rare earth element mineralization. And that ore that is the mineralogy within the rocks is the monazite-hosted rare earth elements, which are more readily liberated with more conventional technology than some others. That coarse mineralization does make it more simple and cost-effective for the primary processing aspects. We've got new targets of similar scale on EPL 6762. We've already talked about how Namibia is one of the best places you can be if you want to bring a new project on. Our ground team, our team on the ground in country, is ensuring that we're in compliance with all the regulatory and legislative demands to operate and be a good corporate citizen within the country. And we have the greenfield exploration potential waiting to be untapped on 8748. So this slide just outlines some of our financials. It's available on the website. And what I'd like to be able to do now is see if we have any questions. And there's one: when are you planning to do some drilling? Well, I think we need to complete our data analytics before drilling and identifying targets. That will take us a couple of months to really ensure that we have the best possible drill program outlined and optimize our chances for success. So I think we're a couple of months out before we really bottom out that drill program, but I'm excited about getting a bit into the ground as soon as we're ready. I don't see any other questions now, but we'll wait a moment, see if anyone else has anything. While we're waiting, I'll go back to some of this activities that occurred. I do want to give a nod to the team in Namibia. They really stepped up when we decided that we were going to cover off the entire EPL, and that was in the fourth quarter of 2023. All of the people on the ground, the support from Gecko Exploration, the individuals that are our direct employees and our casual employees, put their shoulder into it, and they delivered. And it's because of them being able to cover the entirety of EPL 6762, we have the basis for this new concept, new exploration concept, which builds on the previous work that was done. So will there be more drone flights, the UAV flights? That's another question that we have here. Likely, yes. We still have got to finish our data compilation and analytics on the information. It does look very favorable. I think we were all quite surprised and encouraged by the initial results, but we have got to do our homework, and we've got to ensure that every I is dotted and every T is crossed before we start moving forward with additional flights. Can we make them more surgical? Do they need to be regional? These are all questions that we have to ask. Okay, we have another question. How do the new targets compare to zones 1 and 4? Okay, let's go back to this here. You can see the original discovery zones here. And if you only are looking at the rare earth element geochemical signatures, We have these new targets, which are equal to, and in some cases larger than, the signatures that we found in the discovery zones. We can't quantitatively state, are they bigger, are they more lucrative, is there better mineralization at this point? But based on the rare earth element geochem signatures, they are quantitatively and qualitatively similar, and in some cases larger. I don't see any more questions yet. Oh, what are the next significant milestones you are working towards for ETech? Well, obviously, a junior wants to drill off more tons, and I think that this exploration model positions us very well to make new discoveries within EPL 6762, as well as the new EPL 8748. So the next milestones are complete the data analytics in early Q1 of this year, move into initiating the exploration program, and should the results support it, commence a drilling program in the latter half of 2024. I do want to thank Louw, you and your Flightec associates there for the work that you did on this project. I think as we're working through the data, we're learning more. We'll find out how definitive an exploration tool it is, but it's a really good start. You know, it's testing the concepts. We need to, at ETech, make sure that we take advantage of all this data that we have and all the technology that's available. Drilling's expensive. We need to make sure that when a bit hits the ground, we've optimized our chances for success. So with this team, with the work that's been previously done, I think 2024 is going to be a real turning point for the project. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions here. I do see a bit of accolades from one participant there. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. We're trying to do our very best for you and the rest of the shareholders, sir. And with that, I don't believe I have anything more to add. So with that being said, there are no more questions.